Dr. Paul Haefner. Welcome to Sport Psych in a minute. We're talking about the 5 pillars of success, and we've already covered motivation, goals, and resources. And today we're talking about risk. More so than talking about risk, what we're really talking about is our ability to assess the risks that we're taking, and have we consciously accepted the risks that we're taking. A lot of times riders will come to me riding sometime later in their life. They've always been brave, they've always been fearless, for example, maybe on the cross-country course, and they ask me for help because they find themselves feeling backed off or maybe more afraid. And if it's someone who is in their, let's say, late 20s or 30s, I often begin to ask them about the context of their life. And one of the questions that I ask is, do you have children? And sometimes, of course, someone says, yes, I just had a baby, or I have an 18-month-old, or I have 2 little kids. And one of the things that we often don't pay attention to, even though it makes an extraordinary amount of sense once we think about it, is that as the context of our life changes, risks have different consequences for us. And when those risks change in the consequences, then we really need to evaluate them and go through a process of conscious acceptance. Otherwise, our subconscious or unconscious can work to protect us by shutting down in our engagement in sport. So in the case of a parent, now if something were to happen, if they were to get seriously injured, they wouldn't be able to work. They have someone in their life that is counting on them, which is a lot different than when they were 16 or 17 or 18 years old. What I recommend for people is they take some time and they think about what are the risks that they're taking in their riding. And I like them to think about it in 2 ways. First, I like them to think about what are the actual risks that they're taking, and then compare it to what they perceive the risk to be taking. Now, in order to compare actual versus perceived risks, it's often helpful to get the help of somebody outside, perhaps a trainer or a friend who's experienced in the discipline and with the things that you're doing with your horses, people who know your horse, because the risks in each discipline are not the same based on different horses. Once you've done that, once you've done an assessment of the perceived risk and actual risks, and have evaluated whether you have perhaps minimized the risks involved, or in a different direction, maybe you're overblowing the risks. Once you realize what the actual risks are, then I strongly encourage people to go through a process to look at the consequences of their engagement in the sport, the consequences of what happens if those risks come to pass and the worst happens, and then go through a process of saying to themselves consciously, if this were to happen, is it okay? Is it still okay for me to participate in the sport, in this discipline, at this level? Am I willing to accept those risks? Ouch! That's Sport Psych in a minute, and we'll see you next week.